This podcast is part of the Midwest Podcast Network. Find out more about our other shows and how to support our network at MidwestPodcastNetwork.com. Welcome to Gone to Texas, a podcast about AMC's Preacher. My name is Alex, and I have not read any of Ennis and Dillon's Preacher.
And my name is Nick, and I have read all of Ennis and Dillon's Preacher.
Today we will be discussing Season 3, Episode 7 of the AMC series titled Hilter. That's right, Hilter, not Hitler.
Yeah.
Because I apparently, and the rest of the internet, cannot read.
Yeah, I as soon as I looked up the episode today, or as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh, it says Hilter.
Yeah. While we will not
Hilter Skilter.
While we will not be spoiling any of the comic and by extension any future plotlines of the show, we will be discussing the details of the series through Season 3, Episode 7. So pause this and go catch up before you listen to the rest of our episode. You can find more episodes of our podcast at g2tpodcast.com. That's the letter G, number 2, letter T, podcast.com. We're also G2T Podcast on Twitter. And you can send feedback to g2tpodcast at gmail.com to tell us what you think of our show and share your thoughts on AMC's Preacher. If you enjoy this show or any other show on the Midwest Podcast Network, please consider heading over to patreon.com/MidwestPodnet. That's MidwestPodnet. And pledge as little as $1 a month to make our network even better. Special thanks to Jason K., who's pledged at the level of $10 per month. So, yeah, in terms of corrections this week, last week I said Episode 7 was called Hitler, but it's actually Hilter.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah, I didn't actually notice that until after I started watching the episode a second time. Because I think my brain even heard Hitler instead of Hilter when the manager said that, so...
I know, it wasn't... I mean, as soon as I saw the name tag clearly, I was like, oh, that's... Wow. Good cover.
Yeah, I must have been a little distracted upon my first viewing. But, yeah, so we did get a quick email from our friend Sue. She said, "Hi, guys. All I want to say is that the Allfather is the most disgusting thing I've seen on TV. And I hate that Cassidy is not with the old gang. On a happy note, I love the way you guys help each other out when you can't think of the name of someone or something. Keep up the good work, Sue." Thank you, Sue.
Thanks, Sue. Good to hear from you.
Seems like she must be caught up or close to caught up if she's seeing the Allfather. So that's good. Because she joined us with the Alienist recap. And then she caught up on Preacher to start watching the show with us as well. So she's either close or there. So thank you for joining us on this journey and for signing up for Hulu just so you could listen to our show.
Yeah, thank you.
Support
means a lot.
Yes. And then we did also get a tweet from our friend Martin. Martin tweeted at us a couple weeks ago. He did say, and so I'll read his previous tweet. He said, "This season's really had its foot on the gas. Shows the Hell storyline was just padding. Only had shots of Eugene going home and finding a crater." And he said, "I'd be okay if the Saint just beat Hitler to death." Actually, he said Hilter in his tweet. So he knew. He must have known.
On it.
I didn't look to see if the title sequence for Hitler shows. I think that shows the name tag.
Yeah.
But
it's probably been there all along. We just haven't noticed.
He said, "I'd be okay if the Saint just beat Hilter to death with a foot-long sub before the opening titles." And then he tweeted us this week and said, "I was so close with the cold open." And then he also said Cassidy being Lois Lane in the flying sequences is the best. So pretty good.
That's
Thank
beautiful.
you, Martin. Yeah, absolutely.
That's such a beautiful way to phrase that.
Yeah.
Oh.
Joe Gilgun makes a great Lois Lane.
Oh, yeah. They should put him in just a beautiful flowing black wig.
That would be very good. Take
Icarius's hair and just apply it to Cassidy.
Yes. All right. We can get on with the recap. So this week's teaser, Hitler has established himself as an employee of the week at Max's Maxi Grinders, a Subway-style restaurant where he has been utilizing the pseudonym David Hilter. One day on his break in the back alley, the complaints of his peers bring him fully back to the Adolf Hitler of the 1940s, complete with a German-language tirade about nationalism. As he plots the return of the Third Reich, the saint of killers in Eugene come to collect him and take him back to hell. Two things. We have been very full-throated about our skepticalness of them using Hitler for comedy. And I think it gets even worse somehow in this episode.
Yeah.
And we can come back to that. And then number 2, this all seems so perfunctory that I'm really curious as to what the point even is. It's almost like they didn't know what to do with them.
Yes.
And are now just relegating them to 5 minutes at the start of a couple episodes. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that completely. I actually feel the exact same way. It feels like I don't know if maybe they had a grander plan in mind, and then somebody was like, you know what? Maybe this Hitler story has gone about as far as it can, or I don't know. I'm in a show that has demonstrated time and time again that they're plotting carefully and they're planning things with certain payoffs in mind. It's really frustrating to think that perhaps they didn't have a great idea for Hitler, or it got squashed somewhere. I mean, it kind of reinforces my opinion that maybe they shouldn't have gone down this road to begin with. Like maybe, I don't know. I at the same time, it's kind of a relief that he's still just, Hitler, classic Hitler.
I guess the thing is like, if it was a mistake, would you rather them have not tried to fix the mistake and then also make it so spaced out? Like, should we have seen the Saint do this in episode 2 and then call it a day?
That's interesting. So you think potentially part of the reason it's been put off so long is because they didn't know what to do? Like, they were like, we'll just push that later. And
I think people were so put off by the Hell storyline last season that it was kind of like you know what, we're going to show people that this is the preacher that they want. Because they gave us like 4 or 5 episodes before we even had the Satan and Saint meeting.
Right, yeah.
And then it just kind of... I just... Without knowing what's going to happen in the next 3 episodes, it just seems so weirdly plotted out. Just this subplot.
It does. I'm having a hard time even describing how I feel about it because it's that confusing.
Yeah.
I'm that like mixed on it all because some of that sequence is really funny. Like and I felt guilty for laughing at some of it, but like when that little boy's piling all that avocado on there and she's like, you can't separate my son from his avocado, and he's like, a delightful child. Yeah. I was like, what the hell? Like it made me laugh, and then I was like, oh God, I shouldn't be laughing at any of this. And then, but all the stuff in the alley I didn't think was funny at all. Like I was like, this isn't getting a chuckle out of me. Like I don't know. It just feels like it might be a little too in poor taste. And I don't know. It didn't. The one part that kind of made me grin a little bit was him plotting his return on like a napkin.
Yeah.
And like listing his coworkers as like his various like lieutenants.
The circuit works guy is the head of the SS or whatever.
Yes. Yeah. And I was like, okay, this is like what a child would do. And that was a little I was like, this is clever. But it was kind of worth it for Eugene. No, you know what? It wasn't worth it. Because even like Eugene seeing him and him being like, oh great, like, and Eugene being like, I should have never let you out. I was like, yeah, duh. Like this isn't groundbreaking in any way. No. And it just felt like, kind of a waste of our time.
I guess I can see how the political events of the most recent couple of years would lead them to a place where they could maybe explore what Nazism is in a modern context, but I don't feel like they did any of the legwork to
and you should
even
probably
discuss that.
You should probably just use a fictitious character.
Yeah.
Like, just make an original character, because, I mean, there's such a thing on the internet known as the Hitler argument, and it's known as, like, the shittiest way to argue with somebody is by comparing something to Hitler.
Yeah.
It's like, it's so extreme that you can't argue against it. You can't it can't be entered into any sort of equation. And I feel like that in their minds they had a good idea, and they're like, we could do this, but I think it was kind of dead on arrival. Like there was nothing about that plot was stimulating, even in season 2.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
and which is really a shame because Eugene is so tethered to it, and he's fantastic.
yeah, that's true.
So I don't know. Whatever. I'm ready for it to be done. Like honestly, I thought the Saint was going to walk in, and when he was screaming at him that he wasn't going to go back, I thought the Saint was just going to put a bullet in his head.
Yeah.
But I was like, oh, he doesn't have his guns, so he can't. But honestly, if they get, I don't know what they have in mind for him, but he's good. Send him off.
So
we're good.
I think you said last week that you felt like there's no way they are going to get back to hell. How do you feel about that this week?
I still kind of think that they won't necessarily get back there, but if they do, I feel like some of them are walking immediately back out again.
Okay.
I don't think Eugene is spending any more time in hell, any significant time, and the Saint certainly isn't. Hitler's fate, I don't know, but I hope it's right back to hell, and we don't have to bother with it anymore, because it was a distraction in season 2, and now it's a waste.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was good without it. Just the Saint coming to get Eugene was cool, and I kind of like that weird pair up. I almost hope I get a scene or two of them on their like long walk back to hell.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
I don't know.
No, I don't. Yeah. There's not a whole lot more to say about it, I guess, without beating a dead horse, I guess.
Yeah.
All right. In Act 1, as Jesse and Tulip light a funeral pyre for Sabina in the swamp, Starr arrives to meet with Jesse and Grandma. They discuss Starr paying Jesse's debt down in exchange for being able to use Jesse to resolve a business dispute, but Grandma is skeptical and just wants one thing: souls. Icarius shows Cassidy a coffin that he had made for him. Cassidy has also been requested to turn Lisa for her blood ceremony, and Cassidy rebuffs at first, thinking nothing good has become of creating more vampires. In that instant, Dang returns to the lair to fly, quote-unquote. Lisa informs Cassidy that once someone is turned, Icarius takes them to the airport to send them off to a new country to perform mission work and to make the world a safer place for vampires, and Cassidy seems impressed. And then finally in Act 1, Hoover heads into a church and gives a strange confession where he gets sent down an elevator into a gym where nuns and preachers are training. Hoover informs them that he wants to catch a vampire, and they all stop to look at him. Yeah, so I really enjoyed watching Starr and Grandma meet and negotiate.
Yeah, same here.
It was just the
just
show,
them sitting there looking at each other was funny.
yeah. Like it's an interesting tableau, and like the fact that like Grandma is completely unfazed by Starr. It's not like she's not intimidated by him. There's no amount of like, she's not horrified at his appearance. There's none of that. It is just, okay, let's talk, or whatever. Like, it's just a very interesting dynamic between the two of them.
Yeah. And vice versa.
Yeah.
Starr is he's nothing about her occupation or anything phases him. He's just like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah. So what do you it's kind of hard to talk about because we haven't really gotten to what Jesse thinks Starr can do to help them actually pay down his debt. But I guess we'll get there. But did you have any other thoughts about that meeting, or I guess the funeral pyre as well?
The funeral pyre, I didn't count on that, and I thought it was kind of nice actually. I didn't expect that, and I thought that was a nice thing to include. I also thought both of their reactions were sincere and regretful, and I thought that was kind of important. I mean, for a show that just randomly and wantonly just kills so many characters, I thought it was good to show that she kind of got caught in the crossfire. They did manipulate her into some situations, but I don't think either of them counted on that happening or wanted it to happen. So
Yeah.
I kind of liked that was there.
The Creole Viking funeral I thought was very interesting. The idea of just tying a gas can to the end of the pyre as it floats out. It's pretty ingenious, actually.
Yeah, that was clever. I thought the whole thing was well done. I like all the scenes that take place in the swamp. I just think are really funny and interesting, especially as compared to like where we've been in previous seasons.
Yeah,
just like even color wise, it's kind of nice.
Mm-hmm.
On the whole, I didn't really love this episode very much, but I thought it was filled with lots of moments that were really, really great.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of lines that I loved. Like I actually laughed out loud several times during this episode. And when I feel like I say that in a lot of our episodes, like, oh, this actually made me laugh out loud. But I mean, like, I don't know about everybody else, but it's not particularly common for me, like when I'm watching something either by myself or whatever, to like actually start laughing unless I'm like with friends and we're watching a comedy. But there were several moments where I actually like, and there was one where I was like laughing so hard I like had to rewind it because I missed the line. And I'll get to that.
Yeah.
But I think it was potentially the funniest thing to happen all season. But Starr's line when he's feeding her all the options he has for her, and he's looking around and he's like, "If you want to leave the 19th century behind," like just that alone was so good.
Yeah,
I was just like, man, Starr is just so awesome. He's so funny and so perfectly written and played.
It's fun to see him in a position to where he has to help someone to get what he wants.
Yeah,
like he seems to at least like Jesse has somehow made it clear to him like killing her is not an option.
Mm-hmm.
And we need her to be happy, otherwise I'm dead and you don't get what you want either. And that whole the dynamics swirling around that entire meeting are just fascinating. But
as much fun as Starr is when he has like absolute power, he's really fun to watch when he has to work with somebody.
Yeah.
And when he has to deal with people and he can't just like strong arm his way into it, and you watch him try to like even converse, it's really funny.
Mm-hmm.
I loved also another thing that made me giggle was when Hoover is on the phone and then he hangs up and he sprints across the street into the church. Why he didn't just call him from right outside the church door, I don't know, but the sprint itself was so funny, and I was like, why does Hoover run like that? It just like really cracked me up. Is this a scene where he describes where they get into the details of the souls and how the Grail owns?
Not quite yet.
That's later? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'll save my notes for that then.
Yeah, we can come back to that.
Okay.
What did you think about some of the Icarius and Cassidy stuff? Like, clearly we're getting it's fun to see Joe Gilgan trying to be like a little bit of a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
And he's trying to act all cool about it, but he's really horrible as he's playing pool. Like he's just really bad at. He like tries to call a shot on a ball that's not even the 8 ball, and he just completely womps. Like,
and he says purple ball at one point. Yeah. It was that was funny too. I really liked the reveal because you see him walk on the table and he's like purple ball corner, and the camera kind of jibs down a little bit and you see the table is still covered in balls and you're like, what's the point? Like, what are you doing? It's really good. You could tell that for as long as he's been around, he hasn't played much pool, which is odd. Yeah, he's such a natural. Like, you can just watch. I like that all 3 of the show's leads are such gifted actors that they can do lots of long takes, but with Joe Gilgan, it's especially fun just to watch the camera just like move around and let him just do his thing.
Yeah.
I swear that when the camera cuts, he's probably the exact same. Like some of those lines are probably how he talks to the crew. He's like, all right. And he's like, they just roll and he's like, let me do this. And just like, just goes for it.
Yeah,
he's so good.
None of his what if none of his Coen brothers hate is actually written for him? It's just stuff that he's been talking about around the set.
I hope so. Yeah, seriously. He strikes me as one of those guys who just like will have conversations with like anybody
Mm-hmm.
and on the crew, and the writers will probably be like, so what what are your likes and dislikes, and then try to work it in.
I did notice this episode that all three of them are listed as co-executive producers now. And I don't know if that's always been the case or not. I don't know when that started, but that was just interesting to me.
That is interesting that because I mean, a producer credit for a Starr is not like, it's almost comical as you get near the like later seasons of The Office when you see that half of the cast are producers.
Yeah,
it makes you realize that eventually this shit gets to a point where it's not that serious to be like a producer of some sort. You're kind of like, oh, okay, like you put some money in and that kind of thing. But it's weird how that works. But for co-executive producers, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and it just kind of struck me as the fact that like I was like, as you said, putting some money in, like maybe they needed to buy in a little bit to make season 3 happen, which is simultaneously cool and a little bit sad at the same time.
I guess I shouldn't be too quick to be like, oh, they're co-executive producers, because a lot of times the titles are somewhat meaningless. But I don't know. There's a lot that goes into like funding this kind of stuff, and if any of them own production companies or are partners in production companies, that can play a role too.
Yeah.
So, no, that is interesting. I hadn't noticed that, but it's kind of cool to see the Starrs invested on a higher level than just let me show up and perform and get paid kind of thing.
Yeah. Did you? So I liked and simultaneously didn't really like the like montage of stock photos and clips that they showed for like as Lisa's explaining Icarius's mission.
Oh, I loved it.
It was like,
I thought it was really funny. It reminded me of Too Many Cooks, and I don't know why.
If they had shown it on the guise of like the L'Enfant du Sang website or something, maybe I would have liked it a little bit more. But the fact that it was like diegetic in the show, like the only thing that I really, really loved about it was the shot of Dang hanging the thing in the window and just smiling through it
into the camera.
Yeah. That part was incredible to me. But like the rest of it, I was just kind of like, they just did some color correction on some Getty Images video or something like that, and called it a day.
It worked for me. I thought it was funny.
Yeah.
It could have had more like cornball vampire related sound effects. I think I would have loved that too, like the owl hooting.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff.
Some Dracula organ or something like that over the top.
Yes, totally. Yeah. It would have been a good opportunity. I don't know. I thought it was funny. I'm actually glad you mentioned that because I forgot to take a note during that sequence. But I love too how it's like her profile and she's looking all hopeful and it's like little 50% opacity over it. Like I don't know. I really liked it. I was like, this is really good. She's so like she's so into it and like believes it so heartedly and so wholeheartedly. And she says all that with such conviction that I started believing it, even though. From the start, I was like, this guy's a predator. There's no way. There's no way. There's no way that you're filling the world with more of you when you're essentially the most powerful being like on the planet.
Yeah.
To your knowledge, anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. But then as she's saying, and then when she gets done telling it to Cassidy, and he's like, it's pretty cool, and she's like, yeah, it is cool. And then he does that laugh. He does this weird laugh right at the end of the scene, and the scene cuts right after that. But the way he laughs, it felt so... because she puts her teeth back in her mouth.
Yeah.
And when she puts her teeth back in her mouth, he laughs, and I feel like it's a real laugh that he didn't think she was going to do that. Because it doesn't feel like Cassidy at all. It feels like somebody like breaking character. And then it like cuts so immediately after that. I was like, I wonder if they just left that in. As it worked really well. Like, it really cracked me up, too. She gets done telling us, and she's the perfect actress. Her eyes are just so, like, glowy, and she just like pops those teeth back in, and he just lets out this weird little hoot. It's awesome.
That's really good.
That whole bit I really enjoyed. I thought that was really funny.
I did want to highlight. I saw in my notes here that I had bolded the down home witching hour with Voodoo Granny or some such. That's easy. That's an email.
That's an email. Yeah. And Starr's so funny because he doesn't talk. I mean. he doesn't always talk a lot, but I like that Grandma's lack of any sort of response makes him continue, and that he kind of continues the same thought. Like he's expecting the more I expand this sentence, maybe they'll agree, because he's like, or some such. That's easy. That's an email.
Yeah.
Just keeps slowly falling out of his mouth, and it's awesome.
I forget what I was listening to or watching, but there was somebody talking about how interviewing people, it could have even been something we were talking about, but the idea of like interviewing people or talking to them about something, how you being silent can lead to pulling more out of like an interview subject or something like that.
Sure.
And that
because we feel the need to have words happening.
Yeah. So it certainly that effect is at play in that conversation. So, all right. And then these vampire hunting clergy, are they of any resemblance to anything in the comic? If you don't want to answer, that's fine. But
I don't. Maybe. I actually can't remember clearly.
Okay.
I kind of think some elements, like Les Enfants, have been very different, but I feel like some elements now are starting to swing back towards the book.
Okay.
All I know is that all the like buff nuns and priests training in the gym. Oh, that killed me. I love the one like there's like the Monsignor that he talks to that's like kind of the main one, but then there's this one in the background who's just huge and he has like a sleeveless it's a habit on or whatever it's called with his like collar, and I was like, oh my god, this is so good. I want a whole episode about those guys.
Yeah,
like that's it's really funny.
I after seeing that sequence, I was like, oh god, these guys are going to be fantastic. And then like by the end of the episode, I was like, we're probably never going to see them again.
Yeah, I know, yeah, and like it was such a great introduction, and I was like, they did not capitalize on that at all.
Yeah. All right, we can go ahead with Act 2. Featherstone, Tulip, TC, and Jody all wait in the kitchen as the powers meet in the next room over. Featherstone refers to Genesis in front of the group, and TC questions it, but Tulip and Featherstone tell him it's just a band in a weird moment of synchronicity. Jesse shows Starr a Soul Happy Go-Go briefcase, and Starr says the Grail owns the place, and he offers to get Grandma millions of souls from their Willy Wonka Oompa Loompa room-esque warehouse. Grandma says he needs to make it happen, and then he can borrow Jesse, but he's on a time crunch. Starr wants to send Featherstone, and Jesse wants to send Tulip to Japan, so they both end up getting selected for the job. Yeah, so this is a little bit of a continuation of stuff that we were already talking about. The fact that Featherstone lets Genesis kind of slip, and that TC makes a note of it, is interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like with most people, that conversation would just kind of go over the head and just be like, oh, that's weird, and then you forget about it, you know? But the fact that TC's that tuned into that and could realize that is a little bit impressive for him, and also just kind of different for most people, I think. But
yeah, it's a little disappointing that Jody is not the one to kind of pick up on it more. Jody's been kind of like sleepwalking through these last few episodes, and it's a real shame because they set him up to be such a badass in the first few episodes, and just knowing from the book what an insanely cool and like terrifying character he is. I watch him in the show, and I'm like, he's just kind of like the enforcer. He's just kind of like the muscle.
You saying that, and these last two episodes are making me think that like the reason he's not in the main credits is maybe they just didn't have enough time with him.
Maybe.
Literally, like it almost seems like they didn't quite have the opportunity to use him as much as they wanted to, because even like he kind of disappears in this episode, and then they're like, oh yeah, he's going to Japan with you guys, and then he's on the plane.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a little strange.
Yeah, and he is kind of an enforcer in the book. He's definitely this weird like invincible thing, but he's also really smart. He's definitely the brains of the two in the book. And I'm not suggesting that I want TC to be dumber in the show, because I really like what they've done with him. But I just want Jody to kind of be more, for them to kind of be on a level playing field, like a double threat sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fair. Um, Good. It's fun to watch Featherstone and Tulip interact with the charade down more. They got like Tulip got to beat her up a little bit the last time we saw them together, but now that it's just like, oh, we need to be kind of civil around each other. It's fun to watch them bounce off of each other a little bit, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm getting a little sick of the weird feud that they have. It's just kind of like the same thing in every scene.
Yeah.
And I'm getting a little like played out. I'm like, all right, I get it. Like, we got it.
Yeah.
Because I feel like Featherstone shouldn't care. She's supposed to be like this professional, buttoned up, devoted to the Grail. So she should only be thinking about like the mission, unless her MO right now is to kind of unseat, or rather rattle Tulip enough to get her to slip up, which is possible. That's why she's just
Being so antagonistic.
constantly, like poking at her. But Tulip is, I don't know, can't explain her reaction other than we know she's pretty fiery and she doesn't like being talked down to.
Yeah, well, and I think there's kind of the two other things to it, because I think that might be a little bit of a topic that Joseph touches on in his email that we're going to get to. But I think Tulip's anger partly has to do with the fact that Featherstone is the one who shot her when she died.
Yeah,
and then also I think Tulip thought she had a genuine connection with Jenny.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that bond got violated by what Featherstone was actually doing kind of sucks too.
Yeah, that's true.
So I think that's kind of where it's at. The other thing I was going to say, not that I feel like we've gotten a very clear indication of it, but with how much we see Featherstone like crushing on Starr, I wonder if some of Featherstone's hatred towards Tulip is the fact that he's kind of I can think of one line where he paid a little bit of respect to Tulip in terms of Featherstone walking up with her busted nose, and Starr says, "My God, a woman did that to you." Like, maybe there's a little bit of jealousy there. Like, and she even says something at the table of like, "Love is a funny thing" or something like that. Like,
yeah,
there's seeds of it there.
Yeah, there's definitely some jealousy there, because we see the look on her face later when Tulip and Jesse kiss each other goodbye.
Yeah.
And she's very much like, oh, I want that with
Starr.
Hair Starr.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good point.
Yeah. So I think it's there. I don't know that the show has done the legwork, but yeah.
I liked TC's weird stretches he's doing as he's walking around the kitchen.
Lunging around the kitchen.
Yeah. At first, when it first shows him, I was like, is he cleaning something on the floor? I thought he had like thrown a towel on the floor. Yeah, exactly.
No, he like
just walking around.
He's this really weird, like, that's one of the things that I love about Colin Cunningham's performance, is that he puts this really weird physicality into it. Like, Absolutely. He is doing so much with his body alone that it doesn't comprehend. Like, I can't even comprehend all of it. There's this way that it's like episode 2 when he's cleaning up some of the swamp consomme that Jesse shoots with the shotgun in the premiere. There's this way that he turns to talk to Cass, and he sits down on the ladder that he's on with this weird confidence that is just mind-blowing to me, even though it's not like of any import. Like, it's just it's so strange to watch somebody operating on that level. But
he reminds me of like early Sam Rockwell, like before Sam Rockwell was super proven, but when he was like in the Green Mile and that kind of thing, he had like this physical presence to him that was like weird, and you felt like he was some kind of creature that you wouldn't be able to even get your hands around. He'd be too slippery and he'd get away from you. But yeah, that's a great way to describe it. Is this weird physicality? Because even later, when he's kind of leering behind Starr,
Yep.
when he's just standing
Shifting
there,
his weight and
yeah, and just kind
yeah.
of making these weird faces, and he's also like kind of weirdly built, and like he's kind of buff, and you're like, what's TC doing? Like just lifting up engines all the time.
He's slouching so much that you can't tell if he's like buff or if he's fat. Like it's almost impossible for you to discern that because of how horrid his posture is.
Yeah,
It's really it's a thing of wonder, really. But
yeah, it's fun to even watch him just walk around like in the kitchen. It's like that's totally one of those things where he was like, I think I'm gonna lunge my way around the kitchen for this scene.
yeah,
Feels right. Meanwhile, Jody just stands there and doesn't move, which I think is very appropriate for him.
yeah.
They're quite the duo.
Yeah. I really love that everyone is apparently now referring to Featherstone as Flufferman because
Flufferman, yeah.
Starr can never actually remember. He hasn't bothered to remember her name yet.
Yeah, I cracked up when Jesse says that later.
Yeah. But yeah, no, we'll get to more on the Japan plan, I guess, later on. So in Act 3, Cassidy reluctantly turns Lisa, and Icarius tells her that she'll fly tomorrow. Cassidy seems a little guilty about enjoying turning Lisa, and Icarius comforts him about it, but they decide to go out on the town, flying, drinking, glamoring, and turning into cats. Hoover and the Monsignors spy from afar, and Hoover wants Cassidy alive, but the Catman's fate is up to the Monsignor. Starr, Featherstone, Jesse, and Tulip make a plan to hit the Soul Happy Go-Go warehouse in Japan. Featherstone has a deep and rich backstory for her cover identity, Veruca Weiss, while Tulip refuses to use her assigned identity, Janie Finch, and instead wants to go with Marnie Pomerantz. Starr informs her that since her cover is as a Grail HR person, she'll need to wear a uniform. And then away from the Grail, Tulip expresses her reluctance to work with them, but Jesse says it's their only option. When Tulip tells Jesse she's worried she'll pull some O'Hare shit, Jesse comforts her and explains he would have been wrong to ever refer to the curse. All right. Yeah, Cassidy turning Lisa, I thought was well done. Him like trying to stall with the story about how there's like a, what does he say, a micro history of you in the dust that's in your house and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Just the crazy weird ramblings of the junkie that Cassidy is, I think were quite good. But this felt a little bit more like last episode, and I guess it progresses a little further in Act 4, but seeing the abilities used again was fun, but ultimately I felt like was a little bit of a,
yeah,
we get it.
I could see that.
Yeah. Any thoughts about them, or we'll come back to?
I like that the ritual was done on the pool table.
Yeah,
I didn't realize that's what it was in the first time we saw it, and then this time because we saw it in use, and like all the blankets on it, you could see all the pockets. I was like, oh god.
Yeah. I was really worried about her hair like catching fire with the candles that they
all
had
the candles,
laying.
The votives laying there.
Yep.
Yeah, Cass forgetting his line was funny too. He's doing so well at first, and I was like, how does he remember all this? And he's like, hey,
line.
Yeah, basically, yeah. That was good.
Yeah.
I like Icarius telling him it's okay if it feels good. Like that was very interesting, and I feel like something that everybody who's ever been addicted to like a substance has had someone tell them at some point.
Interesting.
And I was like, this is really gross. Like how does Cassidy of all people not understand what's happening right now?
Yeah, that he's being groomed.
Yeah, even Cass, who has done so much nasty stuff, is like his instinct is like this. It's not really right turning people.
Yeah,
and he's like, I don't really do it. It's not my thing. These people are consenting adults, as he says. He's like, they know what they're doing. Very much like the words of like someone who sees a path that they don't want to go down, and they see nothing but like addiction and ruin for them, and then. Icarius, between his shit that he feeds them and like the willing participants who seem innocent, and are by by most regards getting caught up and be like, it's okay, and Cass kind of like letting his guard down. And then when Ikarius came and sat down next to him, he was like, it's okay, it feels good. I was like, oh no, run.
Yeah,
it was sad, like, because he's preying on. I mean, he's using those people. He's preying on them, but he's also preying on Cassidy too. Like, he's on his loneliness and his desire for companionship. I don't know what he's after though, still. So we're gonna have to get to that, I guess.
Yeah. We'll talk about that in Act 4. But I agree. I'm not quite clear on what Ikarius's ultimate plan is. If it's just finding a companion, or if there's something more sinister to it. But we'll see.
I did enjoy seeing Joe Gilgan laying on a sidewalk talking to a kitten.
Yeah.
Like, from afar, where they're spying on him, I was like, this is probably a really funny scene to shoot. Him just laying on his side, just like talking to this little teeny all-black kitten.
And when the cat goes to lick himself and you hear the Ikarius voiceover of, oh, I can do this. It's like,
I can do this.
Yeah, they were like, we'll have the camera on the cat, he'll do some stuff, and then we'll make up whatever gets said later.
Totally.
Like, it's that the idea of that is really funny to me.
It reminds me a little bit of the scene in Day for Night where they're trying to work with the cat.
Yeah.
With the cat actor, they keep like throwing it at the milk dish to try to get it to do what they want, and it keeps like running away, or like turning around and coming back, kind of thing. I was watching this thinking, like, how'd they get that kitten to just sit there the whole time? I don't know. Must be a good one.
How did that cat not run away?
Yeah, exactly. Or get distracted by something.
Yep.
I liked Cassie's saying I should at least have a tail by now or something.
Yeah, as if it's like a slow, like he can partly transform
like
or something
one piece
like that.
at a time.
Yeah. Yeah, I liked Starr telling them to check out the sushi place at the Imperial Hotel and to keep their receipts.
Save your receipts, yeah. Yeah, that was one of the really good belly laughs that I got, because the way he says it is so funny. He just like commands it.
Yeah.
Keep your receipts. I really wanted to hear him say, "We will reimburse you."
Your expenses will be covered.
Yes. I loved when he was talking to. It was at some point, I think, when he was talking to Grandma still, where the way he says Japan.
Japan.
He like Japan. It was like JYA. In Japan. And when he compared it to Willy Wonka's Oompa Loompa room.
Yes.
And I was like, his metaphor's kind of there, but like the Oompa Loompa room. That was good.
He knows Oompa Loompas are a thing, but he doesn't quite. Yeah.
Yeah. I liked his being so irritated with Featherstone, like diving into her backstory, and he's like,
good. Yeah.
Fine. I think he says fine.
Yeah, he literally doesn't care, and she's all about it. And then there's Tulip, of course, who does not have I see a lot of myself in Tulip in the sense of like, why would I put effort into that thing that literally doesn't matter at all?
Yeah, it's interesting because Tulip she just got it naturally. Like, she can wing it.
Yeah.
That's in her toolbox. She could just talk her way into it, talk her way out of it, and she has the base of her cover. Like, it's simple enough that it will take root, and she could just naturally improvise from there.
Yeah.
Whereas Featherstone's is so specific that she's going to get married to certain parts of it in her mind, and she's not going to be thinking about what she's supposed to be doing. She's going to be thinking about her character.
She won't be flexible enough to like fully adapt to what's happening in front of her, because
it's actually like straight out of Inception. It's like the idea has to be simple enough that the mind can adapt it on its own, and kind of populate your own mind with the idea. If the idea is too complex, it will like reject it or like view it as fabricated.
Yeah.
And that's why when you see a lot of characters and grifters and movies and stuff try to lie, and it's too complex and it just doesn't feel natural.
Yeah.
And Featherstone is very robotic. Like, if you walked up to her, I'd be like, but at the same time, we've seen her pull off some amazing characters too. Like
Yeah.
she fooled Jesse, she fooled Tulip. So maybe there is something to it.
It's,
They must have been riffing on like some method actors or something when they were writing that. Like
yeah.
people who just go a little too hard.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was funny.
Yeah. And then the conversation between Jesse and Tulip I thought was good, but it didn't quite get like I like the idea of him touching on like the there's no such thing as the O'Hare curse, but I don't quite fully think he's there necessarily.
Yeah, I really like that he is the one person who can say that to her, who's like, no, like that is some shit. Like that's in your head and it's not real. And when he tells her she's the toughest, most survivingist or whatever he says, there's like something really sweet about the way that she's like, I like that, even though it's like not a real word. And they have this kind of nice, like the two of them they're each the only person for each other that can do that. And like, I'm watching the scene and I'm like, man, whew, Jesse really has just grown and come a long way since season 2. But then I'm like, but when did it happen? And you know what I mean? Like it feels like he has made like a lot of strides into, because he was such a selfish like brat and kind of a punk with a one-track mind in season 2. And he's so much more like mindful even in season 1, and now he's all of a sudden like he's like Gandalf the White all of a sudden. And I don't get it. Like what happened? And maybe it's just a culmination of everything that has happened this season, including Tulip dying and coming back to life, and maybe him being in the coffin again, and that kind of stuff. Maybe maybe snapping back to like the worst that life had to offer him ever has kind of made him grow. But it feels like it's kind of just happening behind the scenes. And
well, I think maybe they've just been a little more deft at making it happen more subtly, because at the start of this season and him being like, we get some episodes that kind of very directly deal with it, particularly the one where they send Cassidy away, is where it's basically just kind of like you see Jesse thinking he's doing what is the best thing for everyone involved and not consulting with anyone or talking about it or conferring, because he's like, this is my family, I know what I have to do. But when Tulip finally puts her foot down and is like, I'm staying here, we got to deal with this together, it feels like that to me is at least a little bit of that changing point, along with the fact that Tulip died and he doesn't have like he's not whole, he doesn't have part of his soul, and he needs to work with people to make it all happen.
That's true.
I think they've kind of sprinkled it throughout. I don't know that it's been as flowing of a story as they would have liked necessarily, especially because season 2 just kind of feels like Jesse doesn't give a fuck about literally anything else. But season 3, I think they've done a really good job with it, at least. So
that's a good point. I think I don't know. I have to think about this one a little bit longer. I feel perhaps there's a way it could be a little more. I think maybe they're just trying so hard to not have characters talk about certain things that they're just, man, this is really not coming out well, is it? It's one of those times I need you to look up how I'm feeling right now and tell it to me. Like, okay, so generally it's show, not tell, right? But there's times when characters sometimes just have to call back to, like, for some reason, the 2 examples that leap immediately into my mind are like here's one that you'll like. So like in Tron Legacy, we get a lot of these like mirroring of earlier events, but instead of the character doing thing A, now they do the thing B that shows that they've changed.
Yeah.
And sometimes like Sam echoing lines from earlier in the movie, or like removing herself from the equation, a line like that, or him like when he says when he grabs the identity disc out of there with her and he flies out, he has some line that's an echo of something she said to him earlier. I don't remember what it is, but You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know the moment you're speaking of.
So it's that kind of idea where like kind of doing like a Nolan thing where you're taking something someone said or something did and flipping it over to show that you have taken in the lesson and you are demonstrating that, or in like Pulp Fiction towards the end when Jules actually like the very end, very last scene when Jules has the gun at Tim Roth and he's telling him like, and he's like, but I'm trying, Ringo, I'm trying real hard to be the shepherd, and he's talking about how he's always been like the bad guy but he's trying to be a better guy. You can have something as on the nose as a character literally saying I'm trying to be a better person, but it's written so well that it doesn't come across that way.
Yeah.
And I feel like I need a moment like that out of Jesse for him to be like, I know that I was obsessed with the wrong stuff. You know what I mean? Like, I don't need to talk anymore about what I want Jesse to say because I'm going to leave that to the showrunners. But I feel like I just need a moment like that, like a one-on-one, like brass tacks, like no bullshit moment between Jesse and Tulip at least.
I think we're driving towards that. I think we'll get there. I think by the end of this season, we will have that Jesse moment of him being like, it's about the family you choose, not the family you're born with, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Because grandma is that blood relative to him.
Sure.
And him killing her or turning away from her or abandoning her or doing whatever he has to do, I think, and you know, in turn, like probably having to make some type of choice in order to save Tulip from that situation is him actively being like, forget the family, the people who raised me and the people who are my blood relatives. Like, I've found my new family or my family in this world in Tulip and maybe Cassidy. But I think we're getting there. But it does feel as though Jesse's kind of leapt ahead of the curve a bit.
And honestly, like when it's okay to sometimes lean into the tropes and the cliches and the cheese a little bit. Like what you were just describing was pretty like it seems like it could be driving that way totally. And like him even like, you know, turning to Tulip at some point and being like, it's about the family you choose or that kind of thing. And I'd be totally okay with that because like in a lesser show or a lesser movie, I'd be like, oh yeah, barf. But you know, take Guardians of the Galaxy, for example. It's chock full of shit like that, but it works.
Yeah.
But it works. So, anyway, I don't need to spend more time on that topic, but I just feel like it's the kind of thing where, like, Jesse has been having some growth. We just haven't been seeing it happen. You know what I mean? I think it's been happening, like, between the scenes almost.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Strange.
That is very interesting.
And this may be something that only I have a problem with, but I feel like maybe it's the kind of thing that if I was binging the show, I would be able to be like, no, 2 episodes ago, he had that one sentence about, you know what I mean? Like that may be the case, but I feel like, I don't know, something. I'm paying attention to the show and I watch it for a reason because we have to record this. And I haven't walked away with that sense yet of that kind of big moment. So
yeah, no, we'll have to key back into that one in the finale or the season wrap up, but. All right. Act 4, Tulip and Jesse say their goodbyes in front of Featherstone, Starr, and TC. Featherstone tries to lay it on Starr like they were doing with each other, but he's oblivious, and the Japan team heads out. Grandma calls Jesse into her room, and she's reluctant to let Jesse go. She makes him promise to come back, otherwise she'll do to him what she did to his mother. Icarius and Cassidy get jumped by Hoover's band of religious vampire hunters, but Cassidy's tolerance of tranquilizers allows him to fight back and destroy the clergy while Hoover gets away. Cassidy speaks regretfully to Icarius about getting mixed up in the Grail and that he has to leave to deal with them, but Icarius encourages him to stay, and they'll fight the Grail together. Then they make out. That's Act 4. Yes. Featherstone trying to ply any type of emotional response out of Starr is...
That was it. That was the moment. I couldn't handle it, and I just started laughing so hard.
Starr's
not even looking at her. That's what's so funny. She like says that line, and you see his head go. It like rotates around like he's a praying mantis. Why? I laughed so hard. Like I was like, God. Give this man some sort of award that says like, hey, we get it. You're the funniest person on TV right now. Oh my god, I was dying.
Yeah.
Why? What did she say? I'll call you from the car. Why?
Yeah.
I'll text you on the plane. Why? He's like, oh man, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
And then she's like, I'll see when the mission's over. And then he's just like, okay. That was
Well,
great.
and she starts it off because as Tulip walks away, she says, "Watch your ass out there," or "Watch your ass," and then Jesse says it back to her, and then you see Featherstone decide she's like, "All right, I'm gonna try this," and she's like, "You watch your ass, sir," or whatever she says to him, and nothing. He gives her nothing, and then she continues with the "I'll call you from the car," and then he gets the "why," and it's just beautifully done.
Yes, it was like Terminator 2 Y scene, which is also hilarious, but this was potentially even funnier.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought that was so good. I can't imagine the guys on set like not just like giggling behind their production monitors, just like at his performance because it's so good.
Yeah.
It reminds me of this story of while filming The Princess Bride and the whole Miracle Max sequence, Rob Reiner had to leave the set.
Yeah.
Because he was laughing so much, he kept ruining takes because he thought Billy Crystal was so funny. Like, because he was just, all his shtick, and like he was, I'm sure, improvising a healthy portion of it. And the director of the film had to leave because his movie was too funny for him. Like, I think that's so wonderful.
Yeah.
And I really hope that Rogan and Goldberg were just like giggling at Pip Torrens just all the time.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to be there. I'd be like, I gotta go. This guy's too good.
That's beautiful.
I really liked too the juxtaposition of that because you really realize how special Tulip and Jesse's relationship really is. Like,
yeah.
it is this really beautiful, unique romance, and those two. Like, it is legit till the end of the world. Like, it is ride or die. It is like take a bullet for you. It's wonderful.
Well, and no matter like how fiery it gets and how like raw they tend to be with each other, they always tend to find their way back to this like sweetness that lies underneath, and it's fantastic.
Those two kids better work this shit out in real life because they are too beautiful together.
It's not gonna do. TC is absolutely one of those people that would not be able to read the social cue of looking at your watch or pulling your phone out.
Just stand there and kind of wait.
Without a doubt.
He's like, oh yeah, by all means, go ahead.
And he checks on it a couple times as if
he kind of leans around.
But there's no part of him that's like, oh, he just wants me to go away.
And Starr makes no attempt to pretend he's actually taking a call. He just stands like this, as if this is your cue to leave. But he doesn't say anything. He doesn't do anything. He doesn't go like, oh, excuse me, like leave the room.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's wonderful. Those two. The show does such a great job of making these weird odd pairs, and it will like take these sets of characters and spin them around until they have to share a scene together, just the two of them or just the three of them, and just to see what happens. And it's like fireworks every time. It's so good.
Absolutely. How did you feel about Grandma's like almost I'm not trying to offend anybody here if they have any type of like mental impairments or disorders or anything like that, but she seems extremely like manic about the fact that Jesse is leaving her. Even though she has that like voodoo control of his life. Like, she could rip him in half if she wanted to. She could cause him pain so much so that he needs to return to her. But
I think that's a great way to scare you as a viewer. I think that kind of uncontrollable, I think manic is a good way to put it. There's nothing as unsettling as like, I shouldn't say there's nothing as unsettling, but there's nothing quite like characters or real people having outbursts and like meltdowns that they have no power over.
Yeah.
Like that freaks you out, and that puts you in a place of, or puts me anyway. I'm sure uh, everyone else as well, in a place of real discomfort because you're like, you have that character has breached the point of reason. They cannot be reasoned with. They are acting on pure like instinct and emotion, and that's scary.
Yeah. And
Especially when they're holding your fate in their hands,
yeah,
like literally.
well, and it certainly seems to give Jesse the pause of like, I need to deal with this yesterday. Like this needs to be over with, and
Yeah,
like
that's a good way.
it's going nowhere. It's going nowhere good real fast, essentially.
Well, it's also a little sad because it seems like almost like a reflection of an elderly grandparent and like a grandchild, just like that, because he knows exactly what to say and what to do to calm her down, and it is very much like if your grandparent is is suffering from dementia or anything like that, they
Yeah.
have these outbursts where um, they don't make sense, and they can't. It's not rooted in any sort of reality or reason, and you just have to like try to calm them down. It was weird because it's kind of a humanizing moment for her,
Yeah.
but at the same time, her obsession, I think, is born out of just some weird, twisted, disgusting place that isn't rooted in humanity at all. So it's freaky. Like it's a freaky scene, and the way Dominic Cooper plays it so calm, the way Jesse reacts so calmly to it, almost makes it scarier.
Yeah.
Because he is
He's
completely
been there before.
yes, yeah, that, and he knows he's walking through a minefield on a tightrope, and every step is precipitous, and he has to just. He has a lot of another skill check dealing with grandma, and that these two characters kind of making promises to each other that both of them will abandon whenever they feel like it or
Yeah.
need to.
Yeah. Yeah, very true. Acarius. So I guess we can kind of get here. Like, do you think there's some type of like perversion in him in turning, like he's gotten so sick of turning people that now he's trying to like make Cassidy the worst that he can be?
That's a good point. Perhaps. I think it's unclear. I mean, I don't think it's unclear anymore that he's a bad guy.
Yeah.
But I don't know exactly what his motivation is. I think part of him does genuinely see a companion in Cassidy. He sees somebody who is like him, but is also kind of unlike him. There's kind of a weird yin and yang to them. They kind of complement each other well because they're so different. They're introducing each other to new things. Icarius is teaching him how to fly and mesmerize and turn into animals, and Cassie's teaching him to hit a bong and like sleep in a beanbag and like that kind of stuff. Like he's kind of a novelty to him, I think. And I think that for the moment, Icarius sees a potential companion and mate, apparently. But I don't think that it's going to last, because I think because he likes to be able to control people and bend them to his will, and he cannot have a relationship because that would require trust and compromise, and I don't think that that's necessarily in a 300-year-old vampire's bones anymore.
Yeah. No, it's certainly. It seems to be driving towards something. Yeah. I don't know exactly what it is as of yet, but I'm okay with that. We haven't been driving through like what Icarius wants for 10 episodes now. We've been trying to figure it out over maybe one.
Yeah, it's no big deal. Like I don't mind this being drawn out like over an episode or two more, because we just got introduced to him.
Yeah, and we're still getting kind of, even if we're kind of touching similar notes, I think it's still interesting to see Cassidy start to think that being a vampire isn't the curse that he made it out to be.
Yeah.
which ultimately sets him up for a fall. But I wonder if he'll carry anything out of it that gives him a little bit more juice in his step, should he survive the...
Yeah, I hope at least some character's growth gets charted here. We'll see.
Yeah. All right.
Did we talk about the actual ambush yet?
Not really. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I covered it in the thing, but I kind of glossed over it. But it was fun.
I thought it was really cool, actually. I liked the idea of like the UV light bulbs, and the guys mobilizing to kind of trap them. Cassidy, his line about the tranquilizers was very funny. Another bit that reminded me of the Princess Bride. Actually, it reminded me of the iocane powder scene. But just the way he phrased it was really funny, and I like him just going into vampire mode again. Joe Gilgun's like physicality when he turns to a vampire. He even like stood up like when you see those videos that are really funny, actually, of cats getting scared, the way they arch their backs and they like scurry out of the room. Those are fucking hysterical. But the way he stood kind of reminded me of that, and I was like, that's pretty awesome. And then he just going around snapping necks and doing his thing. But this was the second funniest part of the episode to me, was Icarius running around with his cape up, like trying to shield the sun, and he's like, ah, like trying to block himself.
That was very what we do in the shadows.
Absolutely, dude, it was killing me. I was laughing so hard at him running around like this, and then just like jumping and his hand running, ah! He's really like over the top, like Voldemort yells. It was really, really good. I was like, this is really funny. And at the same time, in that moment, I felt concerned for Icarius. I was like, oh man, he's got a buddy now. I don't want him to die.
Yeah.
I thought his choice to turn to a mouse or to a rat was pretty funny.
The mouse transformation reveal was pretty good. And the fact that like it doesn't just like wash over Cassidy. The fact that he's just kind of like, oh well, it happened again. I lost a friend of mine, and he like goes to sit down and deal with it a little bit, but not like he's not overcome with grief. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, exactly. So no Jenny Utah shooting his clip into the sky.
Oh man, I want that now. That'd be so awesome.
Yeah, maybe someday.
That is a good reference. Well done.
Thank you. All right, I think Act 5. I guess the other thing that I'll say,
does that happen in the New Point break, I wonder?
I have no idea. It
probably not.
Damn well shouldn't, because you can never match up to that. But
no.
I guess I'm pretty unaware of a lot of other vampire stuff on TV right now. I know that like there's that Being Human show that's been on some stuff, but the like gay vampires on TV, it seems really refreshing to me. It's not really something that I expected to see, but I think these two actors play it very well, and they don't like, it just seems like a very genuine connection. And I think that like the kind of implied bisexuality of like something like An Interview with the Vampire, kind of faded out of a lot of vampire stuff as of late that I can think of, and I think seeing something more genuine here, I think, and like overt, I thought was interesting. So
yeah, I think it worked completely.
Yeah,
the two of them really, they, like you said, they do really sell that connection, like that they just have this deeper connection that like borders on a love that they haven't necessarily experienced with anybody else ever, because they haven't come across any other vampires.
Yeah, or in decades maybe, or who knows, you know.
Yeah, that's true. It actually calls into question the I mean, we don't really know how many other vampires are out there or how these vampires are aware of each other, but Cassidy accepts the idea of a vampire dating app pretty casually. He's like, all right.
Yeah.
Like me scrolling through the iTunes store and finding like an app that seems interesting or like a game that's free, and I'm like, that looks kind of cool. I'll try that out. And Cassie just like he's not like, oh my god, there's more.
Yes.
Like so they must be like they must have crossed paths with other vampires before.
Yeah, like I would think so. Unless like we really don't get that much information about that app. Like maybe it is just purely maybe they live in a world where there's an app for people role playing. Like I'm sure there's like some type of furry dating app that's out there on the iTunes store. Like the idea that there's like a role playing vampire dating app doesn't seem that
true.
Outlandish, but it like the fact that he
That's true. Maybe it's very clearly role playing in the app, and he just didn't pick up on it because he's Cassidy.
Yeah. So, all right, and then Act 5. Tulip feels anxious and boxed in on the plane with Featherstone and Jody, all suited up in Grail attire. Lisa gets into a station wagon with Icarius in a garage, and she's excited to go, but he informs her that there will be no plane and that he never intends to send any more vampires out into the world. He presumably disables her in some way and then shoves her out of the car at a spot along the train tracks where it appears he's done this several times before, leaving her to burn in broad daylight. When he gets back, he cozies up to Cassidy in his coffin. TC paints Grandma's nails and asks her what a genesis is, causing Grandma some alarm. And then finally, Starr makes Jesse promise that when Genesis starts working, he won't betray, kill, or force Starr to have sex with him. Jesse promises and puts on the hood to be transported to Grail HQ, and at the HQ, Hoover informs Starr that Cassidy got away, and Starr is angry about this. In the elevator, he pulls Jesse's hood off, and Jesse's soul is waiting for him, but in order for everything to work out, Jesse has to kill the Allfather, who Starr presents to Jesse when the elevator opens up. Or presents Jesse to when the elevator opens up. Anything particular about the plane other than Tulip being restless on a plane makes sense?
No, I liked the enjoy your 16-hour flight.
Yeah.
That was good.
Yeah.
It's weird that they have to fly like coach. They have to fly like a commercial airliner instead of Starr being like, use a private Grail jet that will fly at, Mach 5 and get you there in 8 hours instead. Starr
did mention that he's trying to do things off book.
Yeah, that's got to be why.
Yeah.
It's just interesting because they are still traveling as Grail personnel.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's true.
I don't know.
It's those ideas are a little incompatible, I guess, but
it was funny. I also like that Jody sat in front of her and
leaning all the way back.
Immediately reclines. Yeah, he's definitely that huge dude that would do that.
Yes. Lisa's death. I guess I maybe glossed over her a little bit, and you talked about it a little bit, but she has this earnestness to her performance that is just,
absolutely heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty incredible. Like the fact, like the idea of somebody portraying a person who like actively wants to become a vampire and then go do these good works on their mission.
Mm-hmm.
It shouldn't work, but it absolutely does, and it's like 98% her. Like
her and Dang. They cast two really adorable people that just want to do good.
Yes.
Yeah, that was very sad. That was a bummer, and it's even worse because she's so genuinely scared of him so quickly. When he kind of places his sunglasses on the dash, and he's like, "There is no plane. There never was a new plane," and you see it sinking in, and it's all the more horrifying because she accepts this new reality so quickly that you must think there was some part in the back of her mind that always told her that he was preying on them in some way.
Yeah.
Or that this is a person who that has happened to many times before.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, God, it's just so sad and so dirty and gross when you see somebody victimized like that.
Yeah, absolutely. What made it like even worse in my opinion, or not like worse, but like grosser, is the fact that like he's when he gets in the car with the sunglasses on and everything, it feels like he just woke up and is like kind of hungover from the night before or whatever. And he's just got this air about him of, all right, I got to go take the trash out kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And it's just, the way he performed it was quite unsettling, even just from like getting into the car and like sitting there and everything. So I thought that was interesting. What did you think about the fact that like the car drove up against the wall?
That was clever.
But like to me, it was like, how would they ever have really even gotten? Like I had already accepted the fact that Cassidy could be in like the back seat of a car and be fine. Mm-hmm. And so like the fact that he like would need to maybe do that, maybe like it felt to me like a little bit of an afterthought of like, we're not going to show them along the way. Somehow he stays in shadows the entire time. But
yeah, I don't know. I think that didn't bother me too much. I just kind of thought it was kind of a neat thing to show.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I was wondering the same thing. I thought at first he was just going to open the garage door and let the sunlight in. It was just going to roast her in the car.
Yeah.
But I didn't think about all the ash, all the mess that would be left.
Yeah, that's true.
I think the idea that even when they said, "Oh, they're not going to fly literally," she's like, "You're not going to fly, silly." Ikarius takes him to the airport. Like that sentence made me laugh. I was like, "Really, Ikarius is driving them to the airport?"
Yeah.
And then the idea, the visual of it was him sitting in a station wagon was like really funny. I was like, "Oh, this is good." And then obviously it quickly becomes horrifying. But
a station wagon in Mrs. Rosen's garage.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably her car.
Yeah, probably. And that's the thing that also makes it like even scarier is like once you see it and you like say it out loud, you realize how stupid it is. You're like, there was no way this was ever true, and yet they one after another they go there. I wonder what sort of juice he gets like feeding off of vampires. Like it seems like he's actually drinking their blood. If that's what makes him such an uber vampire, is he drinks the blood of vampires. But I don't know. It's weird. That must be where he's got all his badass power from.
He's killed so many other vampires in the 300 years he's been alive, or whatever he said in this episode.
Yeah.
But he's just accumulated power. Yeah, that's interesting. I don't know. I don't know that much about vampire lore, but I've never really heard of the idea of vampire blood.
Well, yeah, because when you're a vampire, I think you're undead, technically.
Yeah. So, interesting.
He's taking that vampire growth hormone.
If there's any Anne Rice fans out there, or somebody who knows something about vampires accumulating power in some way by consuming other vampires, let me know. Like it's like a Highlander kind of thing.
Yeah, if there's a descendant of a Van Helsing listening to this podcast,
please fill us in. So what did you make of Grandma being alarmed by Genesis? Does that track with anything you know? Can you talk about that or no?
I don't think I know.
You don't think you know what you know, but you may know something that you know?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know what is up with it in the show necessarily. I feel like she's got that phone. She's got that direct line to hell.
Yeah.
I think she probably knows God's missing. I'm kind of starting to think she knows God's missing, and maybe she knows that there's an APB out on Genesis, but never in a million years would she think it would have been in little Jesse.
Did that phone... What happened when that phone got picked up again? Do you remember?
There was just a voice that said, "Who is this?"
Okay.
Or it said, "What do you want?" I think. But I remember I thought it sounded like the warden from hell.
Yeah.
But it was probably just like deep voice number 3 in the show or something.
Yeah.
Like it may very well not get expanded on at all. I just think we were jokingly calling it Grandma's direct line to hell.
Yeah, no, yeah.
But it might be.
Who knows?
I don't know. this episode, this is as much as I shouldn't say I didn't like the episode, but I didn't love it. It's got an awesome ending though. This is a really cool place to leave this episode with this cliffhanger with Grandma, and then with the elevator.
Yeah, that's the thing, and yeah, we'll get to. I guess we can get to Joseph's email, but like touching on the Grail, at least in the end here, Starr. I am so unsure about Starr in terms of like I feel as though he seems so slippery in terms of like where his actual allegiances lie, that it seems to be doing me at least a little bit of a disservice, because I felt very enamored with the fact that he kind of lays his hands, he lays his like life into Jesse's hands essentially, and he makes him promise not to, kill him or anything like that. But at the same time, that he's got Hoover working to get him some type of leverage over Jesse. Like, he seems to be working pretty hard to get that leverage still. That, I don't know, it's just also diabolical. And that's part of the reason why, like, I guess I'm really skeptical about Tulip going with Featherstone, because that maybe Featherstone doesn't intend for Tulip to make it back. And
yeah,
what is Jody going to do when presented with any of it? Like, what's going to happen there? I don't know. Like, I think that to me is the best of this episode, is the fact that we have this chessboard set. It's going to be like a spectacular final 20 moves, I think. Like, I hope these final 3 episodes are just like, we're going to be in Japan next week, and also with the Allfather, and also with a cart. Like, there's a lot of plates spinning right now.
It's ramping up into a hell of a finale for sure.
Yeah.
And I think it's cool that Jody is with Featherstone and Tulip, because he can kind of, there's like a check and balance for each of them.
Yeah.
Because every one of those 3 characters has an interest in making sure that at least one more of them make it back. Like, Featherstone can't necessarily kill Tulip because her life is tied also to Grandma's. Like, I've got to imagine that it extends both ways.
Yeah.
But I guess I don't know for sure. But I don't know. Basically, I just don't think that there's going to be the opportunity for one of those characters to kill another without the third trying to fight it.
Yeah, and intervene in some type of way.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's very true. That's very true. And I guess the thing is I wonder if all 3 of them know that or not.
Yeah, that's true.
Jody could be Tulip could be oblivious, and who knows? Featherstone's obviously she's in the best position to really understand everything. But
yeah.
So we did get an email from our buddy Joseph. He said, "Hey guys, at first I thought this was kind of a blah B- episode, but as I struggled to explain why, I convinced myself that it's worse than that, and I'm hoping you notice some stuff that can cheer me back up. Hopefully there was some clever film work or something, but here's what I think bothered me. First, I liked the mystery of what was up with Hitler and Icarius a lot more than the reveal. Initially, they were these complicated mixes of good and evil. Does Hitler regret what he did? Is there a side of him that recognizes and protects Eugene's innocence? Nope, he's crap. Icarius is crap, and they're both pathetic to boot. The reveals make me feel like their whole story was a waste of my time. I'm still interested to see how their stories affect Eugene and Cassidy, but I'm worried I'll be disappointed in those reveals as well. Second, an episode to set up next week's confrontations is fine, but it felt like the pacing was off. Instead of the tension building so that I can't wait to see the Allfather showdown, the Soul Heist, and the Cassidy-Icarius showdown, I felt like I watched an hour of previously on Preacher, all exposition without much investment. Third, I really didn't like Tulip gratuitously beating Featherstone. I mean, I know Featherstone killed her, but if I recall correctly, it was reasonably a fair fight. Plus, it reminds me of Jesse's sexual abuse of Starr. Jesse never just disables or kills Starr, but instead makes him cram things in his ass or eat his dick. And here we have Tulip giving a straight up abuser's line that Featherstone is making Tulip punch her by pushing Tulip's buttons. Maybe Tulip and Jesse are going to evolve, or maybe the Grail are such assholes that they deserve sadism, but it makes it hard to root for Jesse and Tulip when their Bonnie and Clyde start to drift into natural-born killers territory.
I like that comparison between natural-born killers and Bonnie and Clyde, because those are very similar, but also very different.
Yeah.
It's a really apt comparison.
Yeah, thank you, Joseph, for the I think very well thought out email. Like, I still think there's a lot to like about this episode.
Mm-hmm.
But it is all character work. And I get that some of it isn't quite working. Like, we talked about struggles with charting Jesse's growth and things like that. And so I guess at this point I'm just a little more willing to like ride it out and see. I mean, we're so close to the end of the season that you might as well stick around, and I know that he would be finishing it out anyway, but
yeah,
I think there's a lot here with performances and just interesting little things here and there that are still keeping me invested in the characters, even if they're not quite evolving in the most on-screen type of way, as we previously discussed.
Mm-hmm.
But I get it.
Yeah, I do too. I don't think I'm quite as down as Joseph, because I think although Ikarius especially is like, he is kind of pathetic, and like he said about the reveal. Yeah, the reveal is not a shocker. Like, it's something that I think a lot like Lisa, we all kind of knew in the back of our minds was coming, and his pathetic nature obviously is like, I don't know. I guess you kind of take it a lot of different ways. I think taking it, being disappointed in it and expecting something more out of it, I totally understand that. I think I just kind of thought that's the way it was going to go from the start, and I don't think that knowledge is rooted in the book even, but just in kind of the expectation that a character with that kind of lifespan, maybe it's just like a slightly jaded part of me, but somebody with that kind of lifespan and lifestyle, it just feels like the natural course that they would go down.
Yeah.
Especially somebody who was at their prime and their humanity in that era 300 years ago when the world was very different. Like, maybe he could have actually made a legion of socially conscious vampires, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's what was so refreshing for me about Ikarius last episode, is that I didn't like, you can sense that there's something wrong with him, but it's not like, it didn't necessarily, I don't know. Maybe I'm a little naive in that I wasn't like ready to brand him that much of a predator. But like, I'm pretty sure that I talked and noted about the fact that like Cassidy seems so worn down by the fact that he's a vampire, and he's only 89 years into it. But yet
Sure.
Ikarius seems to be like probably 250 years into it or something like that. There's no way that he couldn't be worse off.
Because he's embraced it, and he's gone to the dark side.
Yes, yes, but he even seems sick of that too. Like, him when he tells Lisa, he's like, "I'm the worst of them all." Like, it's not like that's not a Batman villain telling Batman he's about to face his worst villain. That's him being like, he's just, I don't know. He's just kind of sick of it, and being a villain to him isn't even fun anymore.
Yeah, that's true.
It seems like, to me at least.
Or at least without being a worse villain, he's ready to just take it a step further.
Yeah. Yeah. But I do Joseph's point of I really liked the mystery of what was up with Hitler. Like, I do think there were so many, like, I think our postulation of what they were doing with Hitler in season 2 is better than what ended up happening with Hitler. Like, they had opportunities to take it in an interesting direction, maybe. And we've talked about the movie about what if he, what was the name of the movie that the dude whose name I keep forgetting every week, who plays Hitler? Noah Taylor.
Noah Taylor? And Max?
Yes, Max.
Yeah.
So, like, we've talked about, like, other things that have explored the what if Hitler, wasn't the villain that he was, or, like, this show had the opportunity to explore what if he changed, what if he learned to regret what he did?
Could he be redeemed? Yeah.
Yes, and the answer...
Maybe not redeemed. No.
Yeah.
That's not the right word. Anyway.
Could he feel remorse?
Sure.
And the answer is so clearly no, and that is so clearly boring that...
But it's also so clearly obvious. Like, you don't need to even ask the question when you already know the answer. It's kind of the same thing with Icarius for me.
But I think in fiction like this, there's room for someone to change like that. There is room in fiction. I don't know that it's a great idea from an authorial standpoint to be like, I'm going to put Hitler in this and show that maybe he wasn't such a bad dude. That's probably a horrible choice.
Yeah,
but there's room for it to happen, regardless of whether or not it is good fiction, Like, someone can try and do it if they want, and I was open to that. But they didn't even try that, and it was a waste of time anyway, is kind of where I'm at with that.
I unfortunately don't think so. I don't think there's room for that. I think that argument exists for a reason, and I don't think that they were ever going to come up with something that was going to make me okay with the idea of a character like that finding some remorse, some remorse or some forgiveness or anything. It's just like, I don't know. And I feel like they really solidified it with this episode. Now I'm kind of ready to just be like, okay, I'm done. Like, I'm done.
And I after this episode, I completely agree with you. And
I'm totally down to keep going down the road with Icarius, though. I think there's a really interesting story there.
Yeah.
And I like what they're setting up, and I like that they're really setting Cassidy up for some real next level disappointment.
Oh yeah.
Because I think Preacher as a show has gotten a lot of stuff about Preacher the book right, but I think one lesson that the book continually reinforces is that really bad things can happen to you, and potentially really bad things will happen to you. And the show hasn't really had a lot of really bad stuff happen to our characters yet. Like, the 3 characters, aside from Tulip dying, and then, there's a solution built in for that, but they haven't had a lot taken from them yet in the present. They all have a lot in their past that has been taken from them and that has made them into the kind of twisted people that they are today.
Yeah.
Twisted is maybe too harsh of a word, but the kind of broken people that they are today.
Yeah.
We've seen that Tulip and Jesse certainly have tragedy in their past, and we can kind of wager that Cassidy is too. Like I said, we got to see that shit soon. But we haven't had anything really horrible happen to them right now. Like, they still kind of have each other. They're still kind of together. They're in a bit of a quagmire right now with Grandma, but do you know what I'm saying? Like, we're not seeing the Han Solo and Carbonite kind of thing happen yet, where like something is really taken from these guys,
and therefore maybe goosing the journey of Jesse needs to find God again. Like, we're so far off of that, and I think having bad things happen to them now would lead Jesse. Like, if something were to happen to Tulip, I feel like it would make Jesse be like, God wasn't here for this, and would this have happened if he was there? You know? And kind of like giving him that energy of like, I need some answers. Like,
yeah, that's a great point. point, actually. Yeah, we do kind of need to get back on track with that as well.
And
I think it's safe to say at this point, with the way the momentum is driving, that we're not going to be in Angelville beyond this season. But maybe we will. I don't know. There's a lot of maybes and I don't knows flying around still.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to let up anytime soon.
Yeah, but still, I think I'm more energized and happy in episode 7 of season 3 than I probably was in episode 7 of season 2.
Oh, 1,000 times, yeah. Because in episode 7 of season 2, you still have 5 more episodes to go, or 6 more episodes to go.
Yep.
6 more. God, could you imagine if we had 6 more episodes of this? I mean, I love this show, but no.
I totally agree.
I love a good beer too, but eventually I got to reach the bottom of that sucker and just like take a pause.
Yep. All right. I think that's it. Thank you, Joseph, for the email. Thank you, Sue, for your email. Thank you, Martin.
Thank
for
you,
your
guys.
Twitter.
Thanks as always for all the brilliant conversation going in the Discord.
Yes, Bruce and Joseph still chatting it up. I think even to this moment, as they have lots of thoughts on this week's episode. But yeah, I mean, Bruce did kind of refute a little bit, I think, with Joseph's point in the email that we just read. He said this episode was all set up, true, but I had a lot of fun just watching all the characters interact, which is a little bit like what I said. And then he said seeing the Grail and Angelville groups together was entertaining as hell. And as far as Icarius goes, what he's been doing isn't terribly off from the comic. And I'm just happy to see him, since I thought Denis was taking on certain aspects of his role last season. And then he said, I look forward to Osaka and the Allfather next episode.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, the next episode I feel like is going to be gangbusters.
Yeah,
I'm excited.
And Bruce says, also, we finally got back to the vampire hunters after nearly 3 full seasons. That's true. Like, Cassidy does find a Bible with a bunch of like scrawlings in it in the plane on in the pilot episode.
Yeah, you're right.
So, maybe he's on their list. But yeah, thank you guys for discussing the show with us. It's good to be watching along with people. So,
oh yeah, that's awesome.
Once again, you can find more episodes of our podcast on g2tpodcast.com. We're also on TV Time, Apple Podcast, Stitcher Radio, and all the other podcatchers. We are G2T Podcast on Twitter, and you can email us at g2tpodcast@gmail.com to tell us what you think of our podcast and share your thoughts on AMC's Preacher so we can read them on our show. The Midwest Podcast Network has other shows about video games, horror movies, FX's The Alienist, and HBO's Westworld. Find out more about these shows as well as how to support our network at MidwestPodcastNetwork.com. Our theme music is the song All In by The Red Thread, and it is being used under a non-commercial Creative Commons license. That's all for this episode of Gone to Texas. We can't wait to see what next week's episode of Preacher brings, but until then, go forth and speak the good word.